Hello everybody. As I told in the previous video about adaptive cruise control, let me touch upon requirement hesitation for one more important ADAS functionality, lane departure warning. Now, what are all the various requirements given by the OEM to Tier 1 during requirement solicitation for lane departure warning functionality? So let's see it elaborately. First of all, let's touch upon the functional requirements. The most important functional requirement for lane departure warning is the system must detect lane markings under the following conditions. First is it must detect whether it is daytime, whether it is clear or overcast or rainy conditions. It cannot deprive itself of its job, or it cannot deny itself of its job just because it is rainy or overcast or snowy. It should work equally efficiently on night time, on different types of road types, whether on highways or urban roads or construction zones, whether night time with headlights on low visibility also. Even with headlights, it should work equally accurately. What is the detection range? Minimum 60 to 30 to 60 meters ahead. Now, this is the range distance up to which the camera should clearly identify the lane markings. And what is the speed range? This this lane departure warning functionality usually comes into picture when operating above 60 km per hour. Okay, but this is just for example. Some OEMs may even opt for higher velocity or even opt for lower velocity. Depends upon the type of the car. If it's some kind of a high velocity sports car, something like a AMG or something, they can even opt for a higher range. Or if it is a family car or a commuter car, they can opt for a lower range. But usually it is approximately 60 km per hour. And the system must issue a visual, audible, or haptic warning when unintended lane departure is detected. Now, this is the main requirement of the OEM which they communicate to the Tier 1. It should clearly issue a visual or audible warning. The warning must trigger at least 0.5 seconds before crossing the lane marking. And it should also not give any false positive trigger. Okay, this is called false positive mitigation. The system should not trigger warnings during intentional lane changes. What is meant by intentional lane change? When the driver turns on the signal and then he goes for the lane change, then it must not give any kind of any warning. That is perceived as false positive warning. Next is performance requirements. What are the ways performance requirements of this particular functionality? First is detection accuracy should be greater than 95%. The lane markings should be clearly identified 95% of the time, and false alarm rate should be less than 5%. So only for less than 5% false warnings can be allowed. That doesn't mean false OEM deliberately or Tier 1 should deliberately arrange for less than 5%. You should always aim for 0%. But because of some because of manufacturing allowances, because of some engineering margins, a false rate alarm of 5% is allowed. System latency of 100 milliseconds of not 100 milliseconds, less than 100 milliseconds from detection to warning. So a latency of less than 100 milliseconds is permissible. Next is minimum curve radius detection. Capable of detecting lane markings on curves greater than equal to 250 meters radius. Environmental and operating conditions. Okay, I hope the last minimum curve radius detection is self-explanatory. It should be clearly visible, permissible on curves which has greater than 250-meter radius. Okay, if it is lesser than 250-meter radius, it's almost perceived as some kind of lane change. So there's no point. So only with curves greater than 250-meter radius, this curve radius detection is permissible. Next is operational and environmental conditions. Temperature range should be minus 40 degrees to 85 degrees centigrade. Weather resistance must function in rain, snow, fog, glare conditions. Camera sensor requirements must support greater than 30 frame per second processing and also must comply with ASIL B for functionality. Now, why ASIL B? Because lane departure warning, as important as it does not exactly fall under critical category. So that's the reason ASIL B should suffice. Next is driver interface and HMI requirements. There is something called visual warning display on the instrument cluster. Next is audible warning, a distinct chime, configurable volume. This audible warning should be above a certain decibel level, maybe 55 decibel level or 60 decibel level, because there's no point in audible warning if it is not audible. Okay, so audible warning should be clearly audible to the driver. Next is haptic feedback, steering wheel vibration if equipped. So the steering wheel vibration should be identified, the minimum vibration of the steering wheel, so that it is easily perceived by the driver and so that he can become alert. That is very important. Next is driver customization. Allow enabling, disabling LDW via vehicle settings. Integration and compliance requirements. Now, these are compliance requirements. They come under the verification. It must comply with UN regulation 130. Okay, equivalents like FMVS, GBT in China. And it must support CAN-FLE, FlexRay, Ethernet communication with other ECUs. Now, I clearly explained this in requirement elicitation of adaptive cruise control. It must be able to communicate with various types of communication protocol. Must log events. These are lane departure events, system faults for diagnostics. Cyber security and updates, the secure boot and encrypted data transmission, and ISO 21434. Okay, so the boot must be secure and the transmission must be very encrypted, and it also should support for OTA updates. Validation and testing requirements. Real world testing of greater than 10,000 kilometer of various road conditions. Now this is how you actually validate this lane departure warning. For more than 10,000 kilometers you drive on the actual drive or on a proving ground, and then you ensure that this particular functionality is working properly. It can also be tested in a sill and hill environment. Sill and hill validation I clearly explained in this tutorial. This is also available. So you clearly understand what is meant by sill and hill. Next is end of the line testing, functional check in the manufacturing. Now this is the actual end of the line testing, the actual functional check after the entire manufacturing is completed. Functional safety and cyber security. Okay, functional safety and cyber security requirements that a OEM may specify for the lane departure warning during requirement solicitation with tier 1 supplier. Now let's see what is the functional safety. Functional safety requirements, the LDW system and adhere to automotive safety integral requirements, typically ASIL B or higher depending upon the system impact. As I already said, ASIL B is usually suffices for lane departure warning. Okay, because this is lane departure warning is more like giving convenience to the driver to ensure that he is traveling comfortably in a particular lane. Okay, next is safety goals and fault handling. The system must detect, mitigate sensor failures. If the LDW system fails, it must gracefully degrade. Again, this gracefully, what is this gracefully degrade? It should issue a warning and deactivate safely. It should not give a jerk or some kind of wobbling or anything like that. It must not cause any such kind of inconvenience to the driver. That is called gracefully degrade. Next is fail operational or fail safe. Switch to backup sensor if available. What is this fail operational fail safe? In case any sensor fails, even then it must be warned to the driver, and if at all a backup sensor is available, a backup sensor should take up the active role. Okay, next is diagnostics and monitoring. Continuous self checks for camera and sensor integrity, dirt misalignment. So in case a camera is misaligned or some additional dirt is accumulated on the camera, then it must immediately warn the driver. A diagnostic trouble code which should be immediately logged in. Next is plausibility check. Plausibility check means nothing to avoid false warning. Sometimes it happens that the vehicle may warn the driver even when the vehicle is in perfect lane. And next is error logging, diagnostic trouble code for serviceability. So this error logging capacity is the one actually which enables the service technician to understand where exactly the diagnostic trouble code is. All right. So this diagnostics should happen in a very accurate manner. Next is safety mechanisms. Safety mechanisms are very easy to understand. Watchdog timer to detect software freezes, memory protection, ECC RAM to detect prevent data corruption, safe state transition in case of power loss. So these are the main safety mechanisms that must be intact and that must authenticate the working of the ADAS functionality. Next is ASIL decomposition. If the system relies on multiple ECUs, safety requirements must be decomposed with clear interfaces and safety contracts. Okay, so with this, I'm going to continue next video also. So just I divided this lane departure warning requirements into two videos for the sake of easy understanding. Okay, ASIL decomposition, if at all it is applicable. Usually for ASIL B, further decomposition may not be required, but if at all it is applicable, the system relies on the multiple ECUs, then safety requirements must be decomposed with clear interfaces and safety contracts. Now, this safety contracts is also called uh, DIL. Okay, DIA, Department Interface Agreement. All right. Now let's see in the next video. Let's continue in the next video.